Hey everyone, and welcome to the Orange Chronicles, where I chronicle what I have been doing over the past week. And let's go ahead and jump right in with the books that I finished over the past week. And I talked a decent amount about this book last week in my weekly update, but that is Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. I have finally finished this book, and I do have to say, I think I stopped reading this book to record my last weekly update at one of the most hilarious times I possibly could have. Basically, I got right before a spicy scene happened in this book, and that is where I recorded. And I didn't know that was about to happen. It just was kind of a coincidence that as soon as I started reading again, we jumped basically into a very explicit sex scene that I can honestly say I was not ready for, and it was hilarious for me. I don't know what about it was so funny, but I was belly laughing. I thought it was hilarious, especially at the beginning. I think as the scene went on, it got a little bit better. And I was talking to somebody about this, and they said that being called the most hilarious book somebody has read in a long time for a book that's not a comedy is probably not the highest regard that you could give the book. But overall, I ended up giving Fourth Wing a 3-star read. It's not really a book that I can say I really enjoyed, but it's also not a book that I hated. There were elements in this book that I think work well, and I was talking with somebody else, and they mentioned that this book does a lot of different things, and it just pulls in a lot of different things from a lot of different places, and they think that is part of why this book has sold so well and has reached out to so many people, and I think that's a really good hypothesis. There are so many different elements of other books and just ideas pulled into this that come from so many different places. And I do think that for most people, there's something that you can like latch onto. For me specifically, I thought the world was kind of interesting with the dragons and some of the politics that are going on in the world. I never got overly attached to really any of the characters except maybe one. And I don't think like a lot of the things going on are overly strong, but there are still elements in there that I'm curious about. And I'm probably going to read the next one at least the start of the next one. I don't know if I'm going to continue all the way through with the whole series, but I do plan on having a full video where I talk about thoughts, feelings, all of that with my girlfriend. We read it together, so we're going to record something, and that will be out sometime in March. But overall, I can say I was surprised by this book. I expected to hate read it. I expected to just be dreading picking it up, and it was going to take me forever to read. And in the end, this was a very bingeable book. It was, like I said, it wasn't a great time, but it wasn't a bad time, and it was kind of fun to just read through it and finally get to see what some of this hype is about. Obviously, romantasy blowing people away. It's selling more than anything else and everything. So to finally get to sit down, read it, and experiencing, especially this series for myself, I think was a good thing. Just to have my pulse on what is going on out in the reading world, because obviously, even if it's not your taste, you can't deny that these books are immensely popular. And I think it's good to just kind of at least examine that and not hold your own prejudices too strongly. I always, tell people to read what they want when they want. And I do agree with that. But I do think, especially if you're going to be somebody making videos about books on the internet, you should at least try to broaden your horizon a little bit. And that doesn't mean you have to like everything or that you're going to like everything. But I do think it's just kind of one of those things. It's a nice thing to do to see what else is going on, even if you don't think what you read was for you. But I kept the dragon motif going because I then picked up a very short book. It was a nice kind of palate cleanser. That is The Desert Talon by Karen Lwachi, and I think I am finally getting their last name right. But this is the second book in the Crown of Isha series, and I have I have some mixed feelings on this book, not in a good or a bad way, because I'm still kind of figuring out what I think about the book as a whole. I said this about the first book, and I will say it about this book as well. These two books that I have read from this author, there are books that are 300, 400 pages longer than these that don't accomplish the same level of care and world building that these do. I think both of the first books are less than 150 pages or right at 150 pages, and they are able to accomplish so much in world and character and just building this out very quickly. Everything is very deliberate, and the only reason I say I have some like mixed feelings or confliction about it is I don't know how strongly I feel about it one way or the other. My gut reaction when I first finished the book was a 3-star. I thought it was really good, but I didn't like it as much as the first one. But as I've gotten a little bit further away from it, I think some of the ideas this one is tackling might even be better than what is going on in the first one, The Mountain Crown. So I'm kind of still like waffling on where exactly that one's going to end up. So that one might end up actually getting bumped up to a 4-star because it's one that, as I've, like I said, reflected on it, I think it's much more, it's having much more of an impact on me than I thought it did initially. I will also say I did enjoy this one. This one definitely had a little bit more of a Western vibe. So if you are into like old cowboy kind of stuff with dragons. You get a little bit of that. Like I said, this is only 150-page book, so you can blow through it, and it's not like overly done or anything. But I do think this is a series that I implore people to read, because I think it is extremely well done, and it's such a low commitment. I don't know if it's still true, but when I listened to the first book, I was the first, and at the time of recording this, I'm still the only person to leave a review for the audiobook on Audible. So that's kind of like a feather in my cap that I have very early on into this series. And the next book, I forget what it's called, but it looks like it's going to be a trilogy. And the third one is coming out in July. So you very quickly can get through this whole series, bump up your reading numbers if you care about that, but actually just also really enjoy a pretty deep and thought-provoking story that's tackling themes of colonialism. It has a lot of indigenous kind of vibes to it, where it's people being displaced from where they normally would be, and they kind of have these traditions, and how are these new traditions or how are these old traditions blending in with new cultures. There's just a lot of really interesting things going on in these books that I think, like I said, the fact that this story is being told in 150 pages instead of 550 pages is absolutely brilliant. So for that alone, I think it is worth reading. And then that leaves us with what am I still reading? And I am still reading The Fugitive Prince by Daniel Wirtz. I think last week I said I was about 25% of the way in, and I wasn't. I was actually closer to 20% of the way in. I double checked my Kindle. I was at like 21 or 22%. And according to my Kindle, I checked right before I started recording this, I'm now at 27%. So still just kind of making that slow, meandering progress through this book, but it's been really good. Like I say all the time, I love being in this world. I do think it's great. Big things are happening. I'm really enjoying some of the way time is being handled in this, where we're just like getting a 3-year time gap, because why not? And sometimes I like that. It kind of gives us that illusion of progression without having to see every single mundane thing that is going on. And that's something this series I think has done a good job of in general, where we're not necessarily always with characters when big things are happening, but we're still being told about it the way the story itself is structured. And that's something I have appreciated about Wars of Light and Shadow the entire way through. And I am recording this video a day earlier than normal, so I'm hoping I can actually bump this up even a little bit more before the week is actually over, and continue on here. And I had originally said I wanted to give myself 2 months to finish this, and I'm still not even 50% of the way through, about 2 months in. So part of that is I've been very busy at work, and when I'm done for the day and it's time to go to bed, which is normally when I read a physical book, I'm just going to sleep instead of reading. So maybe things will calm down there, and I'll get a little bit more into that. And then the only other thing that I'm currently reading, and Malazan fans rejoice, I have finally returned to the world of Malazan with House of Chains. And once again, this comes back to work being very busy. I'm maybe 30 minutes into this audiobook. So everyone keeps telling me about Karsa Orlong, is that their name? And Witness Me. That's all people have keep saying to me, and I think I have gotten just a little bit of an introduction into that character. So very much excited to continue on with that and continue my Malazan journey. After Memories of Ice, the series is kind of on an upswing for me. After I didn't have a bad time with Dead House Gates, but it was definitely a harder read for me than I would have liked it to have been. So we're going to see if House of Chains can really propel me through the rest of the series, because it's kind of one of those last, well, not one of the last, it is one of those big series that is kind of a staple in the fantasy genre, especially here on BookTube, where people talk about it, and I just kind of want to be a part of that, be able to talk about it, and at least know what's going on. And obviously I can with certain things, especially I've read 3 of the books so far, so I have a little bit of an idea. But people talk about like Crippled God, of it just being like a next level kind of book, and so I'm excited to at least get to, or try to get to that point. It might take me 2-3 more years till I get there, but it is something that I'm going to continually try to do. And then I don't really have anything planned yet. I haven't looked exactly at my TBR yet, so that video will be coming out sometimes next week. So I'll plan my reading. Obviously those 2 books are going to be on it, but I plan on supplementing it with definitely some comics reads. I did get a new comic book that I'll talk about in that video, and then hopefully maybe some shorter things that I can throw in between 2 pretty massive books, but those are going to need some attention. So I would expect my reading to slow down a little bit in March. Now let's switch gears a little bit to manga, and I didn't read any manga this week. Once again, goes back to work being busy, but along with comic books, I expect manga to be something that I use to break up the long drove of stuff I need to read with Malazan and Wars of Light and Shadow. So if I can sprinkle in a chapter here and there of specifically Frenin and Dragon Ball Super, those are kind of my 2 mainstays right now. And I know at some point I'm going to be having a discussion on the Conviction arc of Berserk with a bunch of people. I don't actually know who all is in for it, so I'm not even going to say everyone's name right now, but that will be happening sometime. So I might need to brush up on the conviction arc too at some point here, because broad strokes I remember, but I need to probably at least flip through it to make sure I have everything in that timeline right as far as manga stuff goes. And then I'll chip away on some of the stuff that I'm caught up to weekly reading, like Boruto. Well, Boruto is monthly, but Boruto, Black Clover, which is very, very close to being done. And I think that might, Vinland Saga, whenever that gets released, Berserk, if that ever gets released, those kinds of things. I'll continue reading on there. And I actually have something exciting to talk about when we talk about what I watched this week. So quickly, still watching Reba, still fun, lighthearted, good time, whatever. I've talked about Reba a bunch. Slowly, it's kind of a, I don't want to call it a background sitcom that I listen to, but it's more of a, I need to just kind of turn my brain off and for an hour and just like watch 3 episodes, 4 episodes of Reba and just like not care about anything else that's going on. Continued to watch, there wasn't any Celebrity Jeopardy, very upset about that, but I did watch some pop culture Jeopardy. But the big thing that I watched this week and actually just finished watching it was Nosferatu. So it finally is out on streaming. I didn't go see it in the theaters like I originally wanted to, but I'm kind of glad I didn't. Unfortunately for me, I mean, I thought it was an okay movie. I haven't seen enough movies to like really have like this broad cinematic like history to be able to rank things against and talk about things. But if you wanted me to give you like my arbitrary feelings, I thought it was good, not great. There were some things I really liked about it. And I think my biggest complaint is, this is obviously a very personal thing because my girlfriend actually really liked what they did with the color palette and how muted it was and how it was smoky. And it has a very distinct look and lighting to the movie itself. For me, I think I would have enjoyed it more if they had just gone full in on a black and white Nosferatu movie. I think it would have worked better for me personally. And I will say some of the vocal choices for how characters spoke, and this is something I actually struggle with a lot, especially with movies and TV. I'm almost always a subtitle always person. Is some of the voices were just really hard for me to understand. Once again, might be a personal thing, and it is funny. Obviously, I have read Dracula and everything, and I know that like the history of Nosferatu is it's like a copyright infringement story of Dracula. I think that's like legitimately how the first movie happened. It was they couldn't get the rights to Dracula, so they made Dracula, but just Nosferatu, and there's like all kinds of legal battles about it and stuff. So like I knew a lot of the lore and stuff, but it was kind of cool to see, wow, this really is very, very, very similar to Dracula, but just different enough that like maybe you could get some plausible deniability if you really wanted to. Whoever the main actress was for the story, I think did a really great job. There was maybe a little bit, I don't know, some of the faces got a little silly at certain points, and there's definitely a lot of like epileptic seizural kind of stuff. And I have history of seeing that, like what it's actually like, and I don't know, it definitely like bordered on like the line of it being overly done for somatic reasons, which I get, but I don't know, it was just kind of an interesting thing that like I could relate to because I have seen a decent amount of those kinds of seizures in my life. So very weird tangent there, but yeah, Nosferatu overall, if you have Peacock, you might as well watch it. I think it's worth it. And I don't know, I will say I didn't think it was scary. I've heard some people say they thought it was really scary. I don't know if I'm just so like desensitized to like horror and stuff at this point, but I didn't really think it was all that scary. And then to wrap it up, what came out on the channel this week, I released my video and it wasn't really a review. It was really me just telling you to read one of my favorite books I have read, and one of my favorite books I have read in a very, very long time, and that was We Used to Live Here by Marcus Kilwer. I don't think it's going to be a book that works for everybody, but it is one of those books that I do want everyone to read because I really feel like most people are going to have a visceral reaction one way or the other, whether they really like it like I did or not so much. Like people have told me like a lot of the things just didn't work for them, and I totally get it. And I think that's why I want people to read it, because I totally understand when somebody's like, I think the writing was bad. I don't think the characters made good decisions. I don't like the ending, like all of these things. I'm like, I totally can see that. But for whatever reason, all of those things just worked for me. And it's one of those weird books where like anytime somebody comes to me on either side of the spectrum, I'm just like, totally get it. And I love it. It's a lot of fun. And if you do get into the book, there's a lot of lore and things that you can kind of dip your toes into. And there's a movie coming out for it. So it'll be curious on if that can be good or not. But that is all for me. I'd love to hear about what you read, watched, played, any of that down below in the comments. But remember, as always, read what you want, when you want.